Hola, chicas. Welcome to Encuentras Your Voice podcast, where Latina voices are amplified by sharing their powerful journeys from ancestry to authenticity, giving voice to generations past, often silenced or erased, while showcasing the aha moment of our guests when they embraced their authenticity and soared into success. I'm your host, Consuelo Crosby, here with you every Wednesday at a new time in this season 8. Given our expanding global audience, con gusto, we are dropping new episodes just after midnight on Wednesdays. So no matter where you are in the world, we are together, leaning into the valuable stories that resonate with you, adding a place of belonging, and sharing resources that may help make life just that much easier. Plus, meet your next best amiga after hearing their story every week. For those of you celebrating Easter last weekend, I hope you felt a deep sense of rebirth and renewal, especially when our days are exposed to so much darkness right now. The timing of our selected theme could not have come at a better time. Today, we are bringing more light and empowerment to you, shared by our guest who has always had a focus of helping others discover their strengths. At a time when we may be feeling lost, overwhelmed, or frustrated, this episode shines light on the simple steps, baby steps, that we can take to renew ourselves in positivity and sustainable life choices as we enter into any kind of unknowns. Latina leader, Dr. Michelle Seijas, thrives in her Mexican and Venezuelan heritage, stemming from a strong lineage of matriarchs, who she credits for her intuition to guide her into the unknowns. It's this intuition that led her to move on from a brilliant career in bilingual education, take a 6-month sabbatical, and discover her authentic self. She didn't wait to have it all figured out. She just knew in her soul it was the right way to go for her. This is the power she brings to our episode today. Figure it out when you get there. The power of self-trust. Michelle ultimately founded her own coaching business, focusing on leaders in transition, guiding them through her 4 pillars of strength, confidence, vision for life, and sustainable life choices, all based on ancestral practices and somatic healing. This episode is for everyone who feels at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to go, and wanting the kindness and supportive community. Settle into your comfy spot, lean in, and get ready to meet your next best amiga. Welcome to Encuentras Your Voice podcast, Michelle. We're so excited to have you here today and really appreciate your time with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You're fun to chat with. And so now we get to invite some other folks into a conversation.
Yes, I would absolutely love that. We love having you here. As we always do, we are creating a living archive of our Latinidad and the diaspora that's occurred. So if you'd love to share your family story, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I'll start off with my maternal side. My maternal grandparents came from Zacatecas, Mexico. And my grandmother actually came here. She had 2 children. She was pregnant with my mom. And she was actually escaping domestic violence in Mexico. So who I consider my grandfather is actually the person she met when she got to the U.S. And, you know, she's a miracle because to be in the 40s with babies and a single mother, she found a husband, she got a job, and she built an entire life that has now fed all of us who are her grandbabies and great-grandbabies and all the things. So she ended up marrying a man. They went to the Central Valley. And so I have farm workers on that side of my family, very much grew up alongside that. So much of the culture that I now carry was being in the Central Valley. My mom taught English to farm workers. My grandmother stayed very connected. My mom to this day goes to church in the farm worker community of the church that my grandmother founded. And so that is the maternal side of my family. And then my dad is from Venezuela, from Caracas, and came here when he was in his 20s following some friends. He's an only child, and so he had a couple guy friends who were like his brothers, and they came to study, and so he followed them. He didn't really have a plan other than he wanted to still be with his friends, his brothers. And he was at a foreign exchange student party. My mom was at a foreign exchange student party, and they met. He heavily pursued her because she was like, you're too young for me. And he was just like, I'm in love. And 47 years later, they're still together in the Central Valley. And
Whoa.
yeah. But because my grandparents on my dad's side were in Venezuela, and unfortunately with all the things that have happened in Venezuela, we have not been there a lot in the past 25 years or so. I carry a lot more of the food culture of Venezuela, but more of the like embedded in me culture of Mexico from having grown up with more of it around me here.
Oh, that is a beautiful story. Oh, I love the love.
Yeah,
47 years. Blessings to your entire family. How wonderful. And I love that you're too young for me.
I know. I'm like, she was a cougar before it was a thing.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for that. And Venezuela. We have not had Venezuela on the podcast, so that's exciting for us. Yeah, I'm trying to hit every point of the Latinidad that's out there. So Venezuela, welcome. And yeah, the hardships, very difficult. Must be very difficult to endure and watch that what's happening in Venezuela.
I just got a text from my dad yesterday. There's still the part of him that has the hope. And so he'll send us, little videos from Venezuela or things that he still follows in his little WhatsApp groups and stuff. And he'll always end it with just like, one day when we go back, one day when I see it again. And I want to be hopeful with him. He remains hopeful that he will be there again.
Oh, I love that. That's his joy. Oh, that's his mama land. He wants to always return home, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
He shall. His soul is there, that's for sure. But grateful he's here with you now. So when you speak to the cultura and the food, let's stay on that a little bit. Like I said, we haven't had Venezuela on the podcast. What is Venezuela like then? What is the food culture like?
Oh, so many good things. I mean, my favorite thing when we've been in Venezuela is just like the same way you might pull off on the side of the road in Mexico and grab some tacos, like you're going to pull off on the side of the road and get some cachapas. They're like corn pancakes. They're like a little sweet, but not dessert, covered in like queso de mano, and you put some butter all over them and just delicious. And thankfully, there actually is some Venezuelan food culture around LA and specifically Pasadena. So when I get a craving, I can head out and get like a nice cachapa, and they still do like queso de mano, and I can pick meats and cheeses, although it's still very California, so you can do avocado options and things like that. But yeah, cachapas are my absolute favorite. I still ask my dad to make them from time to time. I'm going to be real. I don't cook a lot of Venezuelan food myself at home, but I have plenty of options to go out and eat it around here. And my family does still make it quite often.
I love that. That's great to know. Okay, but you have to be able to gather these recipes at least. You got to keep them handed down.
My sister, thankfully, is more of the one who does that. So I can always rest on her. If
stay nice to her.
Yeah.
Stay friends. So what was it like then? You were being raised in the LA area, or where were you soon?
So Central Valley of California. Have family down here because, from my grandmother's side, eventually more of her siblings came. And so a lot of them landed in Southern California, but she followed who I consider my grandfather up to the Central Valley. That's when they opened the Del Monte factory up there. And so they followed the factory up there and they laid roots there. There was a lot of farm worker communities, camps that still exist. And, back then they were able to save up their money, buy a home, and then establish that as their place.
For you, ever challenged the cultura when you felt like, okay, maybe I can't bring this forward with me because I'm feeling left out? Was that a moment in your life?
Yeah. Usually when I tell my story, I say that I feel like this pivotal moment was starting school. Grew up with only Spanish at home. It was very much the only thing I spoke. What my parents spoke at home, my grandparents. And when I started school, it was an English-only school. And immediately, my mom says it took like a span of a month. I was just like English only and only wanted to speak English, started kind of rejecting it being at home and not really being like, I don't want to speak that. Or my grandmother says I used to say like, that's a funny language. And it was like, even 4-year-old me already knew there's something different about us. There's something I have to change. And my little mind was already starting to assimilate without knowing that's what I was doing, right? Thank you to my parents. And I've told them this many times. They didn't give up on it. And so to this day, my dad only speaks Spanish when we're at home, even though he can speak English. My mom primarily speaks English, but she'll use Spanish as well. And so because I always had the ear for it, when I got older and was just like, I want to reclaim this, I would say like around 18, around that age when I was transitioning into college, I started to get more curious about like, oh, I'm seeing more people who've had a similar experience to me where there's parts of themselves they gave up to be the AP kid, the advanced honors kid. And then now it was like, oh, there's a collection of us now in this university that are trying to reclaim and grappling with like, who are we really if we
Yes.
don't give up? And thankfully, because my parents never stopped speaking, I was able to start speaking again. I'm fully fluent. And it was because I never lost the ear for it. And then there's been a journey of my own of being nostalgic, reclaiming, and going back to things that at the time made me feel so different when I was going through K-12 that now I'm kind of like, but it's beautiful that it was different.
Wow. I love that story. Starting at such a very young age. That just shows your power, though. To me, that feels like you always had your brain firing and showing your power. It's funny you say that. That's the exact same verbiage, the exact same words my daughter used when I was trying to teach her Spanish. She was 4 years old, and she said, "Stop speaking that funny language."
Oh.
And we were not 100% in the home. I wasn't growing up 100% in the home because my mom had already felt the threat of, no, we have to speak English. But 18 is very young, I feel, to come back to it with such 100%, this is my identity, and lean in. What school were you at that you felt comfortable enough? Because that's still a struggle.
Yeah.
College is tough. Usually that's the crack open, like, oh my gosh, where did everybody go moment.
I mean, I think there was a few crack open that were happening at the same time that all kind of coincided. There was also this like social justice part of myself that was cracked open. So I think that was like the social justice part of me that was like, I will reclaim and I will speak loudly about it. I was becoming more curious about the experiences that had happened around me, but I had never really asked a lot of questions. So even to your part of, archiving these stories, I credit my sister also with, she started literally recording. She would ask my grandmother questions and like record her talking about things. Hearing more of my mom's story about growing up in the US and to what we, even just the language aspect, she tells stories of why it was so important to her for us to be in English only programs because she grew up in the generation where you would get paddled. Like that old school, there was a paddle in the principal's office because you were speaking Spanish. And so there was so much about that she was, there was some fear, whether it was subconscious or of us having similar experiences and being harmed in some way. So I think there was this part of me that was learning so much about social justice that was just like, part of this is also reclaiming self. I was at UC Davis. So was very much a Chicano studies program, African American studies, women's studies, Asian American studies. I remember taking a whole class on representation on TV and being like, all these TV shows I've been watching, I had no idea the ways that we were being portrayed. Being a little critical of all that Spanish television I had watched, where it was a lot of like a certain kind of Latina that was represented, and that's what we were all supposed to be, and not acknowledging indigenous cultures of Mexico.
Okay. So you actually went from your home in the Central Valley and very comfortable with the cultura surrounded all around you to a mini version, Davis, Sacramento area, still having access and be able to stay with your identity and I feel like that's a rebellion. Like, no, how dare you identify us as such? We are so much more than this. Did you stay in that social justice mindset, or was there still a split to, you have to get the good job, you have to get the 401k, you have to go corporate? What was it like for you?
I will say there was no plan. I just knew I needed to go to college. And there was a couple of things that I was interested in that I was like, I'll major in something and I'll figure it out over the 4 years.
Yeah.
And there were these like pivotal moments where I met somebody or got introduced to something that kind of just started crafting and moving me in a direction. So literally, even joining Minicore, I was in a hallway one day chatting with another Latina who was like, I just got this job interview for this cool program. You should consider it. And I was like, that sounds cool. Honestly, the thing that sounded cool about it was it paid more than like my coffee shop job. And I was just like, okay. And so that's how I ended up working in these communities as a teacher's aide, meeting these teachers who started telling me about this multicultural education program they had all kind of come from in Sacramento. And so it started to feel like maybe this is the direction to move in. So I moved into a multicultural bilingual credentialing program. And so started off as a bilingual education teacher. And it was just a series of events that just felt right, felt comfortable. I'm going to start things here.
I love that you're continuing on, but you've definitely focused on, it was a gut decision. It was an intuition that you checked back with. Even though you started off with the money factor, it leaned into, no, this feels right. This is who I am. In that career, What did you see as the power in that diverse education for the community you were in?
I think there's this part of me that if I look back on it now, it was almost like this reclaiming for little Michelle. Because I remember when I first told my parents, I'm exploring becoming a bilingual education teacher. Like, even though they were both obviously pro-bilingualism, both of them are like, why would you do that? My mom has always kind of had these, and I think, again, her being born here in the upbringing of the 40s and the 50s, my dad kind of being an immigrant, not as intense for him, but she always has this fear of, how is that going to harm you somehow later? How is that somehow going to hurt you? If you just kind of follow this path, it's safer. If you do this thing, it's going to help you out. And in her mind, she's trying to protect me. She wants to be my mama bear. And thankfully, my dad's been more of the like, take the leaps, take the jumps, try the things that just might be kind of scary.
So how do you see it now? Do you have access to what it's like now in that arena of bilingual education?
Funny enough, I just was there last Friday. I went to the CABE conference, which is the California Association of Bilingual Educators. I haven't been to this conference in probably a decade. And being in this room with folks celebrating it, saying we're not going to stop this in the face of all the things that are being discussed in the country right now. Some people are like, oh no, we're on a multilingual campaign right now across the state. The steam has not dropped. It's still going and it's moving. Sometimes we can get so caught up, especially now that I'm in this small room every day, coaching in my little private office, can stay disconnected and only see, the things on the news. But to be in that room, to be with 5,000 people who are committed to moving towards and still figuring out how to make this all work, we care about this being a critical part of our culture. And we see the value in there being language embedded in, making us these well-rounded people and not having to have students give up and allowing more people who that's not their home language to be able to be part of this culture in language and all of that. And to something else that you said, I think now when I think about my place in this, for some folks, as their coach, the only Latina they're really getting to hang out with. I've got people who are in the Midwest who are like, you're the one person I get to talk to. I don't have to explain anything. You just get it. You are the one person who I don't have to justify this vision I have for my leadership with. You're helping me to stay grounded in it. So now I get to be that person for the folks who are maybe in places that don't have as much access to a whole cadre of like Latina leaders around them. And so I want to continue to be that and still be embedded in this movement to make sure that language is still a big part of who we get to be.
I love the power of that. It's empowering, I think, to every listener right now is realizing that you can take that energy, you can take the comunidad and transfer it, bring it with you, have it fuel you, because that is so difficult to stay fueled when you're separated from it. When you have to be on the defense, when you have to explain the context. I love how each of us could do that for our own passion, whatever we're focusing on, is to be one hand into the comunidad and then transfer that into where you're applying it, bring it forward to where you're emphasizing most of your day. We've touched on it a little bit. You do have your own leadership coaching business. Going to get into this and could just congratulate you up front for, again, another big risk-taking soul entrepreneur journey. What was that aha moment where you went, obviously still impassioned with the bilingual education and already knowing it was a big risk for your parents, but how did you get to that aha moment of, I'm going to take another risk. I'm going to completely change and go 180 over here?
Yeah, I've had people say to me, like, you're such a risk taker. And I just don't identify with that when people say that, because I'm just like, I'm just making moves that like feel right. But like, there's a lot of thought and discussion and, calculated risk that's happening on the back end before each one of these leaps. So, from teacher to high school principal, I had a variety of people, and I call them my identity board of directors. It was a collection of these women, Black and Latinas, who were basically kept seeing in me what I wasn't ready to see in myself. And so the person who was going to be like, so you need to go get that admin degree because we got a spot waiting for you. And I was like, what? Who's going to listen to me? I don't think so. But I was like, well, if you see it, I trust you. I'm sure they'll help me out when I get there, and then would make the move. So I kind of started thinking like, oh, I think I'm going to be a superintendent someday. And that was the plan at the time. But when I actually had this kind of like series of events where I was realizing like I just didn't have the passion for getting up and being on campus at 7 a.m. anymore. I started to look at the superintendency and be like, oh, that does not look enticing at all. I can't do that for the next 25 years of my career.
Oh.
I started to realize, I've totally believed in all these people who saw things in me. I think it's time to take a pause and actually say, like, what do I see in myself and what do I want? Because I'm following everybody else's thoughts and opinions, which thankfully have seen great things. But I got to make a pivot here. So the first big risk is back in 2017, I left K-12 education without a plan. I finished up my last school year. I had money saved in the bank, but I was like, I have no idea what life looks like outside of here because this is where I've been for the past 15 years. But I truly believe in my gut that there's something else waiting for me on the other side. And so I had 6 months of reflecting, a lot of resting because that was a 24/7 job, reconnecting with people. I was cooking. I was just getting to just live life for a while. And I would keep these journals. I would go sit at the park and I told myself, any thought that comes to your head, write it down. It doesn't have to make sense. Don't try to just write it all out. And I started collecting these thoughts that would come maybe in a meditation or just while I was reading a book or something. But at the same time, people started calling me and they were like, so we hear that you're free right now. Would you be willing to do this project? And so I started saying yes to everything. Even when I was like, I don't know what in the hell I just signed up for, but I'm going to say yes and like, let's just see what happens. And all of that kind of formulated into me moving to the Bay Area, being the founding executive director for an office in Oakland for a nonprofit that was a national nonprofit where we supported the leadership development of Black and Latinx leaders. And through that experience, got exposed to the coaching world. And so I started connecting with all of these like super dope people of color who were executive coaches in the Bay Area. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so as we were like creating, this office, I was building this team, we're doing all of this work. I was also on the sideline, like, how do I learn about this world? I created a group coaching program called the Chingona Sabbatical that was based off of my 6-month sabbatical. And I was like, what would it look like for more Latinas to be able to just have this protected space, even if they can't quit their job for 6 months like I got to do, but have this protected space to really question everything in a safe community where they could start dreaming and thinking about pivots or transitions they want to make in their life. I ran 5 cohorts of that program and then just started taking on clients. And in 2021, I transitioned full-time into my coaching business now. And so it's been a series of trusting myself, figuring out for myself what success looked like. And to your point, taking some leaps where other people had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, I'm gonna be fully honest. I don't know that I fully know what I'm doing either, but I'm just going to keep trusting myself that I'll figure it out when I get there.
I think that's going to be the title of this episode. Figure it out when you get there.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Really. That's a big deal. I think we have to sit in that and really give you a lot of congratulations on a lot of moments. And I was thinking along this discussion, it seems to be innate to you to have this methodology of self-awareness where you really sit and listen to yourself. Unguided, though. This seems to come from within. Is that on point?
Okay, as you're saying this, I'm looking to the corner. I'm going to show you this. I literally have this card on my desk right now that says, I am being divinely guided by my ancestors. So yes, I think that there is guidance. I think part of it is I give so much credit to my maternal grandmother, which is why I start the story with her. And sometimes I sit and I think like she had to have had some intuition and her self-trust so incredibly deep in ways that I don't even know if she could have fully articulated. And so that lives in me in some respect, right? So I think that there is that guidance from her that I think about often. She's now passed, but I feel very much like her presence is part of this journey that I'm on. And there's something about her journey that I feel like I'm constantly tapping into. And I have moments where I'm kind of like, gosh, this is difficult. I don't know if I can figure this out. And I'm like, she figured out a coyote bringing her across with children. She figured out how to build a whole new family and a life here.
Yes. Yes. I love bringing her forward. What was her name?
Flora Martinez.
Oh, Flora Martinez. Wow. Sass. But you knew her growing up. You knew her when you were little?
Yes. So when my mom taught English to farm workers, it was actually my mom's night job, and then she had her day job. And so my mom would drop us off at my grandmother's house because it was near this little portable where she would teach. And so we would have dinner with my grandma. We'd watch the novelas, Dos Mujeres, Un Camino, Marimar, that era. And we would hang out at her house, watching the novelas. Sometimes she'd whip out her Bible and she'd give us an on-the-spot Bible study, and we'd sit around and listen to her talking.
Wow, you come from matriarchy. No wonder you're so strong. But I love that. I love that it's nature and nurture for you. It's just the reinforcement of her presence, and maybe you felt the power and the joy, obvious joy. Anyone who gets to watch the novelas with her abuelita, that is a joyful moment, everyone. I resonate with you exactly like that, because I'm like that when it comes to risk taking. Not as well planned as you. I will leap a lot sooner before having any thought about it. It's a very much gut reaction. But also to my abuelita, which my mom, all the time when I was growing up, she would say, why do you have to be like my mother? And I'd be like, yes, I'm doing something right, because I saw my mother more fearful, more, like you say, fearful of the system, fearful of the society she was raising us in, and fearful from her upbringing, because her mother also had 2 little daughters and was pregnant when her husband died. There's power in that matriarchy that you honor on any given moment of your decision making, but capturing the legacy of your 3 generations, never to be rewritten. We are never letting Florida Martinez ever get erased or rewritten. Amazing that your sister is capturing this for your family. When it comes to your business, and the name of your business?
Well, the legal name is Seijas Coaching. The community is the Thriving Chingonas.
Yes, the Thriving Chingonas. That's how people will be able to identify your business.
Yes.
Where are you finding the need right now? Where are you finding that young professionals are needing mentoring in?
So when this whole thing started, because it was kind of rooted in that group coaching program that came out of the pandemic, everything was about purpose. People need to follow their purpose, and which I still very much believe. But that's a huge leap for a lot of folks. It was what I realized. And even when they were like, okay, I'm going to trust you and kind of go on this journey, there was just so much resistance and fear along the way. And what have kind of become, I would say, like the 4 pillars now of what I see as the common themes in my coaching with primarily Latinas is valuing our strengths. So many of us value ourselves for labor. I'm a hard worker. I'll take on the extra projects. And being rooted in that makes it very difficult for us to see ourselves as somebody who can just be, somebody who just deserves to be in purpose most of our time. That there will be an abundance that can come to us even if we aren't constantly prioritizing our labor for people to complement us and to see us as. And when I'm coaching executive folk, it's also what's going to block you from making it into the C-suite is if you constantly are just focused on how many hours you can put in the day. Confidence is huge. I did not think I was going to be a confidence coach, but a good chunk of the people who come to me are like, I need to work on my confidence. And I think it goes to kind of the thread of what we just talked about is, to me, confidence is self-trust. And when folks are struggling with confidence, it's because you're not trusting that you're going to figure it out when you get there. And so working a lot on self-trust, which for some folks is not leaps, but is actually just baby steps. And there's tons of research on how if we can take little baby steps and feel success, we retrain our mind, we retrain our body to see the successes before all the failures and the things that we're fearful of can come. The third thing is a clear vision for life and career. I think similar to kind of where my journey started, I get on phone calls regularly with outwardly folks who are very successful. And they're like, so I'm making the 6 figures. I have the house. I have this. I have that. I'm not happy. And it's because we have followed what everybody else has told us is the way to go. If you do this, this, and this, you're going to be successful. But we haven't necessarily defined success. And we got to that place and it hasn't brought the joy that was promised. So having a clear plan. And then the one that's really becoming even more prevalent right now with everything that's happening is people being able to figure out what sustainability looks like for them. So a lot of nervous system somatic work. We're trying so hard to rationalize everything and intellectualize everything in our brains, and we're leaving out this 80% of us, our bodies, that actually are holding so much. They're speaking to us in so many ways, and we're just not listening. And that's where all that cloudiness where we can't hear our intuition comes in. So supporting a lot of folks with valuing strengths, gaining confidence, clear vision for life and career, and then how do we get back into our bodies and engage with them and have somatics to actually have sustainability in whichever route we're choosing moving forward.
Oh, that is clear cut, very succinct, resonates with absolutely everybody, but mostly in the Latinidad with the cultura that you're raised in. Oh, so on point. I mean, it applies to everyone, absolutely. But when you're fed, like you say, when you're fed, this is what you have to do, and you just follow it, I feel like all four of those points, you come to a brick wall. And at various points in your life, you're going to come up against those and not know what to do, because it feels like you're leaving the cultura or you're turning your back to it if you were to choose otherwise.
Ooh, Consuelo, I had a whole therapy session where I was talking about this, similar themes. And I was like, there's this voice I keep hearing our whole conversation that's back here that keeps telling me you're a sellout.
Yes, that's a good word.
Yeah. And so it's like, and when I shared that with a friend, her first response was, I'm going to need you to define what sellout means, because I'm curious what that actually, and so as I started explaining it out loud and I kept grappling with it, but anytime we feel that we are breaking away from what was expected or from what our initial plan was, it's almost as if we feel we're giving up on some part of our culture or some part of ourself. But in reality, we've done so much assimilation. A lot of times we're not even clear on who we are, and it's all convoluted, which is why coaching spaces, therapy spaces are so important, because we need to actually be able to sort through all of this stuff and figure out how much of this is actually really me and how much of this is just so much external that's just getting mixed in with it.
Yeah. And then what point is just evolution, modernizing, taking it to a different version in the modern day. Really difficult, impossible to do alone, because you need answers and you need to hear different stories, which is what we love about the podcast. It's why we do the conversation instead of tell me about your business, bam, 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 which is, you can get that at any Christmas party at work. So don't save it for there. We're not doing it here. Wow, that's invaluable. So necessary. I almost feel that would just be so perfect for anyone. Again, anyone. I feel the transition from wherever your education is into adulthood to go through that, through that self-identity, a little sit down, when you start getting exposed to society and the expectations there and being so different from family, but then where are you on your own, right?
Yeah. I would love for there to be this collection of group coaching programs for Latinas and maybe on some level they exist, but in university settings where they can be grappling with these questions, asking these questions. I would have loved to have been bouncing these ideas around and these thoughts, because this is just as important as knowing how to write a strategic plan. And how do I authentically lead in that process? How do I actually bring parts of myself that I'm hiding to this, because it would actually benefit the whole organization, the culture, for me to be able to bring more of myself to these experiences. We need more of us kind of surrounding the folks who are still in those seats and who are maybe one of a handful as more continue to come, to help them to have clarity and to be grounded and to not feel like they have to keep giving themselves up to lead in these spaces.
Quieting themselves down, leaving parts of them behind and realizing that it is their power and it does benefit everyone. And I think that's the piece that gets lost. It benefits everyone when we bring that diversity, all the diversity, to, the given space. Doesn't matter what it is. Everyone thinks differently. Everyone's experiences are different. It creates a different mindset. We can solve problems in our modern day that go unresolved right now. We wouldn't bring in problems that are currently in our modern day. And I think that's the one component that society's obviously a little blinded on. It's like, oh no, life would only get so much better.
Yeah. Actually, I just did a talk yesterday and I had all this research I was sharing. And I want to say it was the USC Equity Resource Center.
Trojan here.
Hey,
right on.
Well, I used their research yesterday in a presentation. And they actually did a study of Latina leaders across California and all the ways that we lead differently. And everything you just said is what the data showed are the ways that we lead differently. We come in, we actually bring more diversity with us. So yes, we bring other Latinas, but we bring more diversity with us. We diversify the conversations in the rooms that we're in. We actually allocate resources more equitably. So there's research from your USC that actually backs up everything you just said. We show up so differently And it's our connections to our culture. It's our connections to how we've been raised and how we've been grown up and our mindset. And it's benefiting spaces that we're in.
Hello, everybody. Take that global. It comes with ancestral empathetic leadership, where collectively we just want better life for everybody. We don't come with a mindset of, I want mine and I want yours too.
Yep.
So what would you suggest for our listeners right now? Because I'm sure a lot of people are sitting there going, oh, a little bit of an epiphany, a little bit of a light on. When you talk about baby steps, maybe they're not ready for coaching. Maybe they're not ready to commit to changing. Where do they start with the baby steps in really starting their self-awareness? What's an easy access?
Yeah. I mean, I tell folks that oftentimes, and I'm sure this is your audience as well, like these high achieving women, we assume, oh, then it's going to have to require me to go do a silent retreat for 3 days. It's going to require me to do like these big epic things. And I sit on calls with women who start promising me the world. And I'm like, so you're not going to actually do any of that? Because I know what your schedule looks like. So let's take it back a notch. But we automatically want to jump to these huge, grandiose things. And 1 to 2 minutes, can we start with 1 to 2 minutes? You know, there's this science that says that it takes 90 seconds for a feeling to actually run through our body. We repress so much because we think it's going to take us out and it's going to require all this time. But the reason sometimes we need that 3-day silent retreat or we need all these other things is because we just didn't take the 1 to 2 minutes in the moment. So I'll tell people often, like, can we just start maybe before you log into the next Zoom? You're going to take 1 minute, even if you're 1 minute late, to just do some deep breathing and just kind of scan your body real quick. Do I feel any tension? Are there any thoughts that are kind of looming? Anything that I need to maybe like shake off, work with, engage with for a minute or two before I walk into the next thing? We already know what triggers us, what's going to send us into stressed out mode, or it's going to like kind of have us go into fight mode or freeze mode. Can I actually just take a moment? Because I know when I'm in those meetings with such and such people that I leave and I'm kind of spinning. At the end of the day, some folks are like, I like to just shower it off. Maybe I take a shower at the end of the day and I'm literally watching the water and thinking I am rinsing off anything that does not belong to me that I don't carry today. Start with small things like that. You're going to start to hear more of yourself in that process. You're going to start to become more aware of your body in that process. Just start by checking in with it, 1 to 2 minutes. I promise you that you're going to start to hear things. You're going to start to notice things, and you're going to start to tap into more of yourself than you're used to. It starts getting into the clear messages of where you're meant to be, what you're supposed to be doing. But we got to start at least engaging to get to that.
Oh, I would have never come up with that. I would never have thought that a minute or two would really have impact, except to just put a pause, just wall something else off, which tends to be how we get in this singular mindset, because we keep walling off places either that we need to get back to consider, or that we need to keep it away from because we can't handle it because we are in that nerve mode.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that maybe 1 or 2 minutes would be enough to process and get rid of. Just
you know,
powerful.
The thing I would add, if we want to pull our ancestors into this as well, they didn't process. Yeah, they didn't just process things on their own. They didn't go off in the trail on their own and not talk to anybody for a few days or whatever. Grief was done collectively with dance, with drumming, with singing, with some sort of like pounding, whatever it might be. So if we think about, they were actually doing body practices. Dancing is a body practice. It shakes energy. Drumming is a way of creating vibration, just like animals do. If you ever watch animals out in the wild, they're shaking their bodies and they're making noises that are vibrational, like little birds, like calling each other, hummingbirds tapping their wings. Our ancestors were doing those practices. We can do those, yes, alone for the 1 to 2 minutes, but also co-regulate. How do we also think about what it looks like to do that with other people?
Yes, I love that. For me personally, feeling that community where you feel other people have your back, even if it's for that space, at the time that you're in, it allows you to really drop your guard. You can get vulnerable for whatever expanse of time that is. And then a lot of things will come up and leave you in that moment. That sense of you are not alone in it.
Yeah. I've had this conversation with so many folks lately. I think that there is this theme. I think we keep looking to the younger folks to be like, oh, you know, teenagers didn't get to be at school and they're struggling. And I'm like, adults have also kind of forgotten how to make friends.
Definitely.
Like, I feel like we're struggling too. So I think for me, I will say that it was a conscious effort to move to LA when I started my business. So, and part of that was for what you just said, for community. But I knew I'm an extrovert. I know that about myself. And I enjoyed the Bay Area, but I didn't feel rooted in it the same way that I did in Sacramento. And so I was like, well, I could go back to Sacramento, but I also had girlfriends down here that I used to come visit often. And I was like, or this could be an opportunity to finally explore LA, knowing that I have some friends there. And obviously a lot of Latinas, and a lot of the work I do is with Latinas. I was like, so there's potential in LA for business stuff too. Let's give it a try. I think it's being conscious of what are the things that I enjoy doing and how would I build a life outside of work to be able to live them. And so I feel like a lot of folks now, there's this fear in meeting new people.
Yeah.
There's this fear in putting yourself out there and sending the text to check in and say like, hey, would you like to grab dinner next week? Because I think it goes back to that confidence piece. I don't trust myself to be able to handle if they say no. I don't trust myself to even know what to talk about with people that I don't know. So how do we actually just make ourselves interesting so we always got something to talk about? Talk about cool articles, some book you read. People love to talk about themselves. I mean, we're on a podcast right now, and I'm talking about myself for like an hour. Come with a list of 10 questions. You can just ask them questions and be curious about them. But I think there is this art to making friends in adulthood where folks are struggling just as much as young folks are. And we need each other and we need community. And that means we're going to have to be brave enough to invite ourselves or to invite somebody else to join us along the way. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, but that's okay.
Right. That's just moving through life. But I love 2 points on this. One, when it comes to generally for all of us, I do feel the pandemic and social media has made us very vulnerable to being rejected, to being judged. Everything that was there before, but wasn't as highlighted, wasn't there for eternity like it is now. But what I hear from you, and I think, again, the listeners can definitely take away, is that you don't just sit and have life happen to you. You very much go after life in the way that you want it. After this mode of constant self-awareness, knowing yourself, what you want, what fills you up, what calms you down, what makes you feel part of something. Again, that's not natural for everyone. But what is that baby step?
Yeah. I mean, I'll take you back. I've actually had coaching sessions with clients about this because they're like the founder of this thing, but they're like, but I don't want to have to go somewhere and talk about it. And so like sometimes we'll do coaching sessions just on how are you going to network? How are you actually going to show up in the room? So the thing I tell them first is I'm like, well, first of all, being clear about who you are is super important. Because when you know who you are and you're very clear about who you are, it makes it easier for people to be attracted to you. Because then they're kind of like, ooh, I also like that thing you like. Or, ooh, I would want to do that with you. When you're just kind of yourself grappling with like, who am I? I don't even know what I like to do on the weekend. It's hard for people to kind of grab onto that and know. So knowing self is super important. There's something about figuring out who you are and what you actually want out of life that I think is the part where you can then know what you're actually even going out and getting. So having some semblance of just like, these are the most important parts of myself that I want to come through when I'm actually stepping into this space. And then what are you walking into? So I know these 3 things about myself that are really important to me. I want to make sure I attract more people who like to do those 3 things. The space I'm walking into, these are the type of people who are going to be in the room because you probably have some sense of what you're walking into. Who would it be most important for me to get to know and get to meet in this space? If it helps you to have a little bit of a plan, who are the people I'm going to gravitate to, I'm going to want to talk to? What are maybe like 3 questions I can ask anybody in the space that I land with?
Definitely. You're not going to find those people in your living room because they're not there. So you really have nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing. And you never know. You never know who you're going to talk to or who they know. I mean, it's just a ripple effect, right? And I'll speak to kind of from the other direction on that. We were invited, or I was invited, I brought my +1, to a young Latina fashion show. And it was in San Jose. So it spoke to, do I want to drive? It's Sunday night. Jackie, if you're listening, you know my thought process now. But you do go through that. But I felt, one, how often does this happen? This is so cool. Yes, I want to see a Latina fashion show. I don't know what it's going to be like, but it's better than sitting and streaming something on TV because I can do that anytime, right? So that motivation, deeper than that, I felt, here's a woman who's doing this ballsy event that she hadn't done before. I want to show support. I want to show up and show support for her, and to not have her be like, hey, nobody showed up, or specifically, oh, the people I hoped would come didn't come, which is what I got when I was there. She goes, you came. And it made me feel like, okay, this was the right choice to make.
Yeah.
And, ooh, I would not have missed that. That was a blast. That was so cool. And then the vendors and the space. Yeah, so much better than my living room in that moment. Yeah. I mean, we have some good parties. You definitely come to the parties when I have them. I'm going to brag. They're fun. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good comparison as well from the other direction. Who are you supporting?
I love that you pointed that out, because we want people to show up for us, but are we showing up for other people? And so the same person who is kind of like, oh, nobody calls me and invites me to anything. When's the last time that you showed up for somebody else's thing when they invited you? And so, yes, I mean, I think we're putting the manuscript together for a book right now. Like, there's so many things that folks could be doing and so many things we're wanting to receive in friendship and in relationship, but are we actually giving that back to other people? And are we even clear what we're wanting in relationship?
Right. It sounds stereotypical, sounds cliche, but it is a two-way relationship. Oh my God, I love this conversation. It's so empowering. Perfect timing in spring. We are in our April rebirth and renewal aspect. This is so on point for really bringing ourselves forward. I think we have a very good picture of what you're like in the present moment, in the present day. What is something we would not guess about you?
What is the thing that people don't know about me? Here's one I'll give you. A friend of mine who's a therapist, actually, so she's not my therapist, but a friend who is, got me really into Enneagram a few years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm an 8. And at first when I couldn't quite figure out what I was, and she was just like, I'm going to let you go through your own journey, but I'm pretty sure I know what you were. And I landed on 8, and she was like, yep. And the thing about 8s that people don't often see, and I will say I feel like I'm constantly having to explain about myself, is that 8s are these independent leaders. The social justice person, I'm going to stand up for what's right. I care for my people. But there is this level of independent leadership that is the forefront of what people see. And so what people often don't understand about 8s, which often I guess I would translate to probably often don't understand about me is there actually is this longing for vulnerability and softness that we don't always feel we can show, because we've become the person who is the go-to for the voice, the fight, we're going to make sure things are equitable in the way that they should be. And sometimes I just want somebody to come over and take care of me. Sometimes I don't want to have to say the thing that nobody else is saying, because I would love to actually support somebody else doing that and being able to take a step back. But I also will never not let the thing be said, or never not let the thing be done. And so there is this part that though people may think I'm constantly jumping to the thing and always wanting to be the leader, there's a part of me that actually is taking a pause, whether or not people can see it or realize it, and waiting to see, will somebody else step up? And if I don't see it, then I'm like, here I go again. It's my responsibility. But there is a longing to actually be softer, more vulnerable, and not always have to be the one who steps up.
Oh, yeah, no, I resonate with that so much. I want that for you. We're manifesting it here. We're throwing it out in those universal airwaves. I'm manifesting that. Watch out. It's good. What you want happens on this podcast. It happens a lot. But yeah, I really resonate with that, and wanting just to be the softer version, because everyone assumes, well, that's just who you are then. And then there's kind of this standoff. Oh, there she goes again. It's like, trust me, I don't want to be like this, but how else is it going to happen?
Yep.
Because I'm not okay with it not happening. Obviously, it's got to be something important to me at that point. There's a lot of things I could let go now, but yeah, the things that you won't let go, if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And, the thing is that it benefits everyone, and yet not everyone will come and step in. So I very much want that for you. And in that soft moment, what would you do?
So there has been, I will say there's progress, right? Like if I think back to high school principal Michelle, I mean, like vulnerability wasn't even a conversation at all. So there's been a journey of allowing more of it in. There's been a journey of also, to everything we just talked about with community, like, how do I also make sure I'm bringing people into my life who allow that to be more of who I am?
I really appreciate that, because it allows us to see the side that we hold to ourselves, and you being so open allows all of us to be open with ourselves in this moment, listening to you. Let's speak to, how do people contact you? What are you offering? What is your welcome to them?
Yeah. I welcome folks who are in this journey of figuring out all the things that have been buried inside of them. What does that look like? And I've found that for a lot of folks, it might be that they're in some sort of a transition phase or seeking a transition. Usually that's when they're kind of in this moment of like, I want to break open the things that have kind of been hidden. It's been supporting leaders who are transitioning into new positions, or maybe in a leadership position, but wanting to transition maybe the way they show up, or maybe they're taking the organization through a shift. So I've kind of learned my sweet spot with folks is transition and self-discovery. That's a lot of my one-on-one coaching. For my group coaching, like I said, have kind of shelved and gone on a sabbatical for now. I feel like I'm dreaming up a new thing, but I've translated that into now doing some group coaching for organizations. What does this look like when you have a cadre of leaders who are getting ready to take that next move, or maybe are new to a space and they need a safe space? Because we often want to give leaders all this support around the technical, and I totally understand the reason why. But we also need to give them support around the self-awareness, around the clarity, around the confidence, around all the things that I named that we just assume that leaders will bring with them. But if it's never been explicitly discussed, taught, processed, we cannot assume that self-awareness and being able to just navigate all the difficulties of it, and I'm not going to be stressed out, is going to happen. We need to give people tools for that. And then for speaking, I do a variety of speaking engagements, workshops, keynotes. And the hot topics right now is a lot of folks wanting to know, how are we navigating these stressful things that we're going through collectively and within the leadership realms that we're in. So helping folks to figure out, what does that 1 to 2 minutes look like? So teaching people somatic exercises, nervous system regulation, to reduce stress and increase their sustainability and leadership. And then helping people to keep getting clear, defining authenticity. So helping people to get clear on who they are and being able to be who they are without being stressed out all the time. Are kind of like some big themes right now.
Oh, yeah. I think that speaks to humanity as a whole, worldwide. Oh, Michelle, this has been, I feel like we've been through a mini cohort right here. And I'm very eager to lean in. Beautifully crafted professional business. Wow. Again, this isn't something you were trained in. You're just bringing from your innate self. This is a gift and a beautiful talent that you're providing for everyone out there. Congratulations on this, for having the courage to take those risks. And this hit home. Boy, this is a beautiful, beautiful episode. I really appreciate your presence here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm grateful to Rosa for introducing us. And, the first time we chatted, I was like, I could chat with you forever. I want to hop on a plane and hang out with you in Spain. And so,
yes.
So I just appreciate being able to be in conversation with you again and all the different twists and turns that it takes us on.
And the whole time when you're saying, I haven't gone back to the group cohort, I'm thinking, in Spain, we could do a group cohort. Imagine you are leading the event, right?
You don't need to tell me twice.
Thank you so much for this. This is beautiful. And for everyone, we will have these information, your contact information, business information in the show notes. They could easily click through on the episode and get to you, reach out to you and lean in and support you, be that person to give you that soft space to be you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to learning more about your folks and your community and of course, more conversations with you to come.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to have some fun. Join us next week for the last of our April episodes of Rebirth and Renewal. I can't believe April is already over. This one is epic. It has these unbelievable lessons of how stress affects our bodies and the simple, lovingly effective ways to reverse the damage. Mexican-American Ivana Hernandez shares her personal experience of becoming a Chopra-certified meditation teacher and a Reiki master to implement holistic healing after being diagnosed with vitiligo, a condition in which skin loses its pigmentation. Initially feeling shame and embarrassment, Yvonne leaned into her ancestral knowledge to begin her healing journey. Seeing the power personally, Yvonne envisioned a calm and healthy life for her children and began leading meditation sessions at school. Now, she's set to reach 1 million children, offering them the power to create a future based on peace and well-being through her company, Decide Balance, or Decide Balance, in the beauty of bilingual sessions. Learn more about Yvonne on her website, decidebalance.com, and on Instagram at Decide Balance. This is a beautiful exhale waiting to come, so take a deep breath, literally, and step into your truth. Ciao! We love that you have subscribed to this podcast and continue to champion women who understand the life of all things Latina. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Encuentras Your Voice podcast so you don't miss a single episode. They will automatically drop into your listening device each week, and we'd really appreciate if you take a moment to add to the reviews that we already have. Tell us what you like, tell us what you're hoping to hear, and we will get there. Share this with your friends and family to help us grow our comunidad, and keep following us on our social media to Encuentras Your Voice. We are so grateful to you for helping us grow this community and would love to learn of all the amazing Latinos who you know are creating the world we thrive in. So reach out to me on social media at Encuentras Your Voice, and let's keep leaning into our authenticity in pride. Help us make Encuentras Your Voice the place where you are 100%